Hey everybody, welcome to the Trailblazers podcast. We're your hosts, Tyler and Dave.
So we're here to help break down the critical decisions, personal developments, and key factors that help get our guests to where they are today and contribute to where they will be in the future.
Today on the pod, we have Clara, who is a chemical engineering graduate from the University of Alberta. Clara is currently working for Accenture as a management consultant, and we spend quite a bit of time talking about Clara through her journey and transition between management consulting and engineering. I think you guys are really going to like the episode. Clara has a lot of great wisdom. And so without further ado, here we go.
So I know Dave knows you pretty well, Clara, but I don't know you that well. So I was hoping,
it's first time
I was hoping that maybe just for my own sake, you could kind of walk me through your journey through university and kind of the things you got involved with there, and then kind of what your career path has been like since university and kind of how you've ended up where you are now.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Actually, thinking back to what I did at university seems so long ago. I went into engineering at U of A right after high school, and even in high school, I was always really involved with student clubs. That was kind of, I don't know, just the vibe, I guess, in my high school. Everybody wants to get involved. So right away, I started getting involved with, I guess, trying out different clubs. I wasn't really like executive or anything, but getting involved with like student events at the Engineering Student Society at U of A. Volunteering on a couple of things. I think there was also a organization called WISE. It's Women in Science and Engineering or something. So first year, really, I don't think I did as much extracurriculars, really just focusing on my studies, trying to get that GPA. And then as I progressed, I think starting second year is when I really started to get more involved in student clubs. I actually founded a student club with another student, I guess, who was a bit more senior. We ran this program called Students for Learning. It was to provide free tutoring for high school students around the local, like, Edmonton area, I guess. And I think that was like my big involvement at the time, because we started this club. We were recruiting tutors, recruiting execs, letting people know what this program is about, contacting schools. And I took that on like solo, I guess in third year, because the person I co-founded with has left. Just kept getting involved with different clubs and events, nothing too major. Also, that was the time when I started to get involved with case comps. So case comps is technically something that business students do, but there were like one or two case comps that engineering students could participate in. And I heard about them and I started doing them. I think Dave, you're right. You were one of the free judges for one of them.
I chose your team.
So that was something I started. Yeah, so that was like one of the things I started to do before I started going on co-ops. So for U of A, it was either you're in school for a semester or you're on co-op, and you kind of switch off like that. I think, Tyler, you're from U of A as well,
I took
right?
mechanical engineering there from 2013 to 18.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so for, I guess, anyone who wouldn't know, you switch off between internship and school, so sometimes your internship is not in Edmonton. So that's like kind of hard for you to continue with student clubs. So I had to pass off anything I had an executive position in to someone else. Oh, I was also involved with the Chemical Engineering Society. Yeah, I was also in exec there. I think being involved in case comps was the first thing that opened my eye to what I'm doing now, which is in consulting. That was a first little taste. It was fun at the time. It was a little stressful because you have to come with a solution with your team and present it within a few hours to like a pretty big problem. So that was interesting. And as I progressed through my internships, I took quite a few different engineering internships. So none of them was business oriented. I think in my last year, in my last internship especially, I kind of realized, it was fun and it was cool, but is this like really what I want to do for the rest of my career? And when I came back from my final year is when I actually applied for consulting positions. At the same time, also engineering positions. And I got offered for both, but I kind of decided to just make a leap and do consulting. So, and I'm still doing consulting.
Yeah, so it's been obviously like a fun journey so far, and I think I got to know you a little bit too during your bachelor's degree when you were doing your case comps, and also being a judge and helping out with the case comps on the like engineering side of the U of A too. So I guess like on my end, kind of thinking a little bit more about your path so far, have you felt like that decision that you made, say like choosing consulting straight out of school over engineering? Do you kind of see now getting to look back at that decision? Like, do you feel like going right away into management consulting like was good for your development in your career? Or like, do you think there might have been some aspects that might have been like beneficial to say like start in engineering first and then go into consulting afterwards?
Yeah, looking back now, it's funny you ask, because I remember I was torn between whether do I go into consulting or do I do engineering, because I had a really good offer for a position in engineering, and it seems safe. It seems like what everyone else was doing. And my offer would have offered me more money than consulting. So I was really torn, but one of my mentors kind of told me, that was in engineering, told me, you could always come back if consulting doesn't work out in a year. It's not too late for you to reapply to be in EIT, especially from the companies you got offered from. So that's why I just decided without a doubt to go into consulting. And looking back now, it was the right move. I think I would have, I don't know if this is the right word, but wasted time in engineering. When I say wasted time, it's really just, I would be doing something that I wouldn't really enjoy and that wouldn't add long-term value to my life. To me, personally, I don't care a lot about the technical details. That's always been who I am. So I feel like going to a really heavy engineering job wouldn't satisfy me as an individual, and I would have made that transition later on anyway. At least that's how I feel about right now. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that it was just kind of by chance that you discovered that you were interested in consulting and management while you were in university, and it seems to me it's because you were trying like a lot of things and involved in a lot of extracurricular activities and stuff like that. And I know there's always the struggle. Like I experienced it. I know other students experience it. When you're getting involved in these other activities, it's difficult to strike a balance between how much you're trying to do and the things you're trying, and also like maintain a good GPA, because they both require time, right? So how do you view that kind of dichotomy, and kind of how did you decide for yourself how involved you would get in these things and how many things you could try? And obviously you got a lot of benefit out of that, but how did you weight the two while you were in university for the time that you were spending?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like sometimes I was definitely killing myself by trying to continue being involved in extracurriculars. I think for me, that's just always been a really big part of who I am. I guess starting from high school, actually even starting from junior high, I was always involved in community in some club or event. I feel like it adds a bit more fun too. You get to meet different people. And so say how I knew about these case comps was because I was involved in different clubs, meeting different people, some people that were from business, for example, that told me about this path, right? So you never know what you're going to discover. And I feel like sometimes, even at work as well, you're just so siloed into your job and what you're doing. And if you're not if you're not setting up extra time to get involved with a different aspect of your life, you're not going to discover a different aspect of life. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I would think that too. And I think, like a lot of my experience in time as well has kind of brought me to a similar conclusion, Clara. It's been the people that you meet along the way and the things that you do. It really just gives you more and more perspective upon like, what you want to end up doing with your life, for example. And I mean, like similar with me, like, looking back in my path, I don't think I would have thought this would be a possibility, even a few years down the line. I was just talking with a friend yesterday, and like we were asking about career goals after like a master's degree, and I was like, 1, get out of oil and gas, and like 2, just have like a technically like decent job, right? And then like I think like 3.5 years later, I'm like, I guess I achieved that. But you know what, I kind of want to touch another question on this topic, because I think to some extent, like perhaps like those external inputs, they might have some impact on you. So do you think it's like through maybe say like your involvement with clubs and like the people that you meet and the experiences that you had, do you think like a lot of those things are like really what ended up like pushing you down into like these non-traditional paths? And like, do you still like, and even say like post-university time, like now with your career as well, do you also feel that maybe say like some of the things that you've done in your career, say maybe the people you meet or the activities you're doing are also now like continuing to push your career path in a certain direction?
I would say in school, so student clubs, I gain a lot of experience in how to lead, how to work in teams. That's definitely true. How to push initiatives forward. And by going to networking events, I expose myself to different kinds of network, I guess, different possibilities for your career as well. But I wouldn't say that's really what pushed me to pursue this non-traditional path. Sometimes definitely like when you're networking with people, you're like, oh, cool, like you were actually doing that before, but you jumped into this, and that kind of opens your eyes a little bit. But I would say actually doing these extracurricular activities and meeting people always has an effect on you. That's a bit more long term, maybe down the road. That you like sometimes you don't see results right away or the impact it has on you. But it kind of just like it's kind of a snowball. It kind of tumbles and kind of grows bigger. So I would say always network. It will keep your path open. Yeah.
Definitely. It's kind of, I'm interested in like now when you're pursuing a non-traditional path, it seems like the type of work you would be doing would be much different than a traditional engineering job, but there's a lot of skills that you learn during your degree that I think are a lot more transferable than we would immediately realize. So, although you're not doing technical engineering work, do you feel like there's a lot of things or some critical things that you learned during your time getting your degree that you can actually transfer to the type of work you're doing now?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, there's a reason why there's so many engineers in consulting or in, say, investment banking, right? Because we're very analytical. We're trained to solve problems, essentially. So I would say that, like, logic part and I guess the workload as well, really, really trains you. I think a lot of people went into university not anticipating how much workload engineering does give you, and all the balancing time management. Those are all like soft skills that we learned from an engineering degree that a lot of people overlook because everybody knows engineering is a really tough degree to get through. So by getting through that degree, you've shown a number of really quality skills that employers would be looking for.
I would definitely agree with that. And like within the whole frame of reference you just said, it's like engineering basically just teaches you how to solve problems. And I think no matter it's like whatever domain you want to go solve your problems in, as long as you have taken an engineering degree, usually you know how to learn and you also know how to solve your problems as well. So you're always going to have that ability to basically like hunt it down as long as you are like a determined person. One thing that I'm a little curious about, and like I got to spend some time doing this too, so maybe, I also have an opinion on this. What is your thoughts of, say, like, spending a lot of time within your student clubs and like having some leadership positions and also being maybe a member of other ones? What do you kind of feel like the impact that had in, say, like the development of, say, like your like language skills and basically your like, social skills with other people, and like how has that had an impact in your career so far too?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was like crucial for me in my career right now, to be honest. If I hadn't been involved with student clubs, if I hadn't done public speaking, for example, I guess I'm not a naturally good speaker. I think not a lot of people are natural good speakers, and I feel like communication skill is something, I guess a non-traditional engineering path would often require. So a lot of times we're talking to clients, you're presenting a deck that you worked on, you're presenting results. So it's really important to communicate that clearly. And also in consulting, a lot of times you are working with different teams. You're constantly moving between projects to projects, working with different people, different personalities. So it's really important that you get along with them right away and use that time most effectively. So those are the skills I definitely learned, or at least refined through my time at student clubs or just getting involved and meeting people.
And it makes me, that's a really good point. And you mentioned it a few times that like engineering is a hard degree. You learn time management, and so it seems like kind of I know for me personally, like when I got a big shock when I was in first year. I'm like, okay, I need to learn more about time management. I got to learn how to study. I had to learn all of these soft skills on top of actually the actual material of engineering. And it seems like maybe you kind of went through the same thing. So I'm just kind of wondering, were there some points of adversity where maybe you had to be honest with yourself, I'm not that good at this thing and I need to kind of fix this? And was it an intentional process of self-improvement? Say if you're not good at public speaking, did you get into student clubs with the intention of becoming better at that? Or did you have the intention of becoming better at time management? How did you approach those situations?
That's a really good question. I gotta think about this one. I would say, definitely, when you have like so much on your plate, it kind of exposes you to what you're not doing well and where you're lacking. I say like something like communication skills. It's definitely something that's often overlooked in engineering. You never speak up in a class, it wasn't until capstone, I think, that we actually spoke up and presented something. So that's definitely a skill that's often overlooked. So say, for example, when I had my first couple of interviews in co-op, I realized sometimes I would, not be as concise or things like that, or I'd be nervous. So that's something I did notice by myself, I guess. And also it was a big stressor, like just having the amount of workload, like you didn't have enough time to study things in detail, I guess. When you're under pressure, you kind of pick what's most important to you. So I don't think I did everything well. There were certainly certain classes I could have put more time in, but I think that's what you learn is when you're under pressure is you pick what's most important to you.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Like throughout a degree or, even like our lives right now, for example, is like you're going to probably pick the things like you're doing really well. And like you might have some things that are not so strong. And actually speaking a little bit on the communication skills too, I know for myself, with my master's, I also got involved in Toastmasters. And I was doing that for about like 6 to 8 months. And I realized, it's like, I think the preconception that I had beforehand is like, I can like public speak a little bit, like it's okay. But then, you do something like that and you really get like an introspective idea of really where your public speaking skills are. And so, yeah, I would definitely encourage anybody else who's, an engineering student or kind of like just getting started out, like joining something like Toastmasters will really help out like the confidence and like get yourself better for interviews and everything like that too. So definitely like within the engineering communication skill is so key.
No, definitely. Actually, I want to add on to that. I think like one of the times that's something that I gained out of my participation of these different events was actually, I think it was one of the case comps I did. I don't remember which one, to be honest, but I remember our team didn't win, but I got a best speaker award or one of the best speakers, and I was really surprised. I didn't consider myself as a good speaker at all. But that gave me, I guess, some level of confidence that helped me later. So sometimes like you don't see results right away from your participation, but there's always something that you get from that experience, something extra that you get. So I don't think any of the time any student is putting into their extracurriculars is being wasted. You're always going to see some sort of results. Maybe not right away, but maybe later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
love that point.
I
just want to interject and say that's such a good point. Yeah, I feel the same way about that, is that there's really always something to gain, even if you don't win or get the objective that you set out to do. There's going to be so many things to learn and gain along the way, and you'll always come away a better person.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And I know like even on Tyler's end too, like spending like many years within student clubs, like I'm sure you can like basically completely agree on that point too, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like Clara's touching on the point that it's like there's so many unexpected benefits, right? Like there's that area of just kind of like the unknown, and you think something good might be in there for you to extract from it and kind of gain some value, but then there's just so many unknowns that are in there that are going to benefit you as well that you wouldn't have expected. And if you just stay doing predictable things and kind of in your comfort zone, you can't grow, or you can't change yourself in any really significant way doing that. And so I feel like the only way, if you're gonna continue to improve and continue to grow, is to keep throwing yourself into uncomfortable, unknown scenarios. And so it seems like that's exactly what Clara has done over and over again with her extracurricular groups, and she recognizes benefits and gains benefits that she would have never thought at the outset. So it's just another reason to do things like that.
Yeah, and I would say even getting involved with student clubs, it teaches you about teamwork, right? And sometimes when you're in exec, there can be conflicts as well. And I would say that's actually really helpful in a workplace setting, because I guess in student club, not outside of student club, in group projects as well, resolving conflicts, because there will always be conflicts in a workplace setting. So the earlier you learn about that, the more experience you have, the better it is. So
yeah, I can completely agree with that. I mean, and it's just one of those things, we could be naive and be, we'll never have a conflict in the workplace. We're going to get along with 100% of our, our coworkers 100% of the time. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be a coworker. It could just be a project conflict too, for example, or a conflict of ideas. And it's just I think what Tyler's kind of mentioning too, I think this breadth of experience that you put yourself through, and putting yourself obviously into some uncomfortable situations. Engineers don't do case competitions. So, but I'm sure through your experience now, you can look back and be hey, I'm grateful I went and threw myself in so many of these situations, because now you're kind of reap the rewards and reap the benefits, and you have a little bit more breadth of what you've seen so far. And actually talking maybe a bit on the breadth of kind of what you've done and whatnot. So I think, to some extent, our experiences can help us make our choices and help us guide our path going along the line. So for you, one thing I'm curious is that say if there's a university student or somebody who's an early professional right now who's not completely sure what they want to do, do you have any kind of advice to help say that person kind of decide what they should end up doing, and also maybe try to discover the why, why would you decide upon choosing this path?
Yeah, okay, so that's a two-part question. I'll answer the first part. So I think I talked about how I always took the time to get involved outside the class. And I think that's really paid off, because I tried different things. I think I was just as lost, if not more lost, than anyone going to university. I wasn't that sure that I wanted to be an engineer. I was good at math and science, but that was about it. What is engineering really about, So I think that's maybe why I tried a lot of different things, got involved with a lot of different clubs. So I could learn more about myself and what I want to do. I didn't really have a clear passion in mind at the time. And because I did all these things, a lot of times, I think people look at my career jump and was just oh, you suddenly decided you want to do consulting. And you just got in right away. It seems it's pretty easy. But it wasn't. What prepared me to go into consulting was my years of experience of running student clubs, doing these case comps, learning about industry, being good at my job through the internships, learning about the industry. That's what made me successful in my round of interviews, I guess, when I decided to do it. And luckily, those things all piled up to allow me to build a skill set that would allow me to be successful in consulting. So I think I kind of put those pieces together towards the end of my university career and figure out that's what would best suit me. So I would say for anyone who doesn't know what they want to do, don't be a minimalist, definitely be a maximalist. Try anything that piques your interest, or even if it doesn't pique your interest, if your friend wants to do it, please go, just do it with them, right? And what's the worst that could happen? You wasted 3 hours doing something instead of watching Netflix. It's not a waste of time, right? And plus you spent time with someone doing something that's productive. Yeah, I would actually say that's another thing for me is I'm always afraid of wasting time and not being productive. So I would rather do something, even if it doesn't align with my interests or whatever, I would just do it. So I would say that's my advice. And the second part was discovering the why. I think discovering the why, I don't think I actually connected the dots until much later on, but I think everyone kind of had a childhood dream, right? Of like, what do I want to do later on? And I thought I never had that, but I actually did. Mine was kind of boring.
Do you,
It wasn't
do you
as
guys want to
cool
know what
as like
mine
I want
was?
to be an astronaut. What?
I
What
literally
is it?
said this when I was 4 years old. One time, I think in my kindergarten, somebody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said a fire truck. Like I wanted to be a transformer.
Nice.
Okay, but please continue.
See,
No,
this is
but
why
that-
Dave's in machine learning and all this stuff. He's going to just be a cyborg one day. He's still got that same dream, I bet. And
No, I think that's like in some degree like related to what you want to do later on. Like you went to engineering. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch.
I think like I was just a kid and I thought fire trucks were cool, and I was like, I don't want to be a fire truck.
But that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Sorry.
I think I constantly had the same like vision for myself up until like when I was 10, and that was me doing this kind of job, not a consultant, but some sort of like strategy. I would be traveling and working in fancy offices. I guess that was an appeal for consulting for a lot of people, but that was like a vision that I had, and I think a lot of people do have that when they were younger. They're just like, oh, that's irrelevant, or they don't really look back to what that was. And I think you gotta find hints. I think I read this somewhere actually. It's like look at what you spend most of your time doing when you were a child, because that's what you enjoy doing, and that could be what you're doing.
I think that makes a lot of sense because it's like, when you're a kid, you don't have so many obligations and you just kind of spend time doing the things that you're interested in. As you get
Yeah.
older, it becomes more like responsibilities, and I should pick a logical career path that has a good future. And like you were mentioning earlier, you could have
Yeah.
picked a career with a job offer that had more money and you were already in the industry, and that would have made a lot of sense. But it sounds like you kind of listened more to your gut or your inner child, or just knew that you wanted to do something else. And I feel like very often people don't listen to that voice, but I would say that it seems like you're a lot happier because of it. So would that be kind of your message to people, as if they have kind of an inkling or a feeling that they should be doing something else, but they can't exactly put a why on it, but they should maybe just like go down the rabbit hole in that direction just because they feel like that's the right direction to go?
Right. I would say it's actually like, I think I mentioned earlier, I was really torn picking between the job offer, which sounds really privileged. But yeah, one was something that was comfortable, and one was something that was really unknown and uncomfortable. But I definitely knew consulting was something that aligned more with what I want to do in the future, or closer to, than engineering. It was just hard to actually make that into reality, I guess. Yeah. So I would say for anyone, and like I would also say to anyone who's wondering about a career change, please don't do a career change just because you see other people doing a career change. If engineering is good for you, if you suit that, then don't make a career change. Like, it's really important to know who you are, what works for you, and yeah, what your goals are. Maybe your goals for your career isn't grand. Maybe you don't want a big career, and that's fine. If engineering provides you that, flexibility in your work schedule, provides you stability, just stick with it. But if you do want to do something else and engineering isn't going to get you there, I wouldn't, put any extra time just to get that PN or just to stick around for something. Like, don't stick around if you already know, because you're just wasting time. in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a couple things there are like very true. Like for example, on the like the PN side of things, right? Like I mean, I think some people are like, oh, I want like a status or a title because like it'll be always there with me, for example. But I mean, like if you know already by the time you graduate, you're like, yeah, I actually really want to do something else and something completely different. I mean, it's like you don't have to like sacrifice like the happiness quality of your life to like do something that maybe you're not completely like wanting to do like deep down inside. I had one more thing that I wanted to say, like in regards to like the career path switching. I would completely agree with that too. You know, it's definitely a lot of work to basically like reinvent yourself and like reinvent your brand in order to do something else. And like it is an amazing thing to do, and like the breadth of experience that you can get afterwards from basically like having like a previous background beforehand and then doing something afterwards. Like you do certainly have a really nice breadth of experience, but like as you mentioned, don't just do it because you see like all your friends are doing it and whatnot. But like you can definitely ask a lot of good questions and take the time to understand. Right. And I think that's one thing that is like always really relevant, is just taking like a little bit of extra time in order to like ask the right questions. Reach out to people if you're interested in something. And I think you always have some kind of like great perspectives afterwards if you just have a couple extra discussions, and then you can make your decisions.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm a little curious on is we touched a little bit on, say, like some of these technical skills and soft skills that might be really transferable between, like, say, like an engineering degree and also management consulting that you're doing right now, like communication, for example. Would you mind like talking a little bit on like some technical skills that you can see? Like I know we talked about problem solving. Anything else that you see was like, say, either relevant between like your internships and what you're doing now, or perhaps even like engineering work like within the school setting and what you're doing now?
Okay. I would say another really important thing is writing in a concise manner. And I don't mean like papers. Sometimes it would just be paragraphs or an email. Making sure you're communicating the right message to the right stakeholder. That's pretty important. Like the tone of your message even matters a lot. Something else, I guess, basic coding experience. That's kind of handy for almost any job you go into now. Doing basic like macro VBA on Excel, that can go a long way with a lot of the different jobs you do. For me, I also use Power BI right now, so some sort of data visualization skill that you can pick up would be good too. I guess also be the more technical skill that I gained. I would say so. Soft skills, should I talk about that as well?
Sure, why not? I think it'd be valuable for anybody listening.
I think, yes, soft skills, and I think maybe I want to throw a curveball in there that maybe you can answer at the same time, because I noticed that you've been involved in a lot of student leadership positions. And so I know from talking to other people now after the fact, I know it's quite common, and I kind of had really my own battle with when you step into these leadership positions as a young person, a lot of imposter syndrome, and that like I'm not ready for this, to be doing this and stuff like that. And I noticed everybody else that I looked at that did this stuff, it always seemed like they were very naturally comfortable with it and they weren't having any issues with it at all. So I think people like having that imposter syndrome and that like I wouldn't be able to do that, it stops them from doing those types of things. So I was just wondering if you had experienced the same thing in stepping into those leadership positions, and were there maybe some soft skills that helped you in those situations?
Yeah, I definitely experience imposter syndrome like almost every day, probably. Even at my job right now, I think everybody experiences to a different degree every time you're doing something new that you haven't done before. So definitely. I think as a student, though, when you're stepping into a leadership position, especially if you're new, you definitely haven't done that before. And who's to say someone else at the same level can do it better than you, right? If you're passionate about it and you're willing to put in the time to do it, or people voted you to do it, if someone else believes you can do it, you can do it. So that's what I would say to people who have imposter syndrome. Even like I I experienced it even at my job, at some of the internships I got, because, you know, what we learned at school is definitely not what you do at work. So I definitely felt like I was an imposter. But again, I had the grades, I had the resume. Someone interviewed me to do it. They believe I can do it. I could probably do it, right? So after a couple weeks on the job or things like that, it just kind of eases down, and just gotta have confidence in yourself that you can do it.
Yeah.
Sounds so cheesy.
But I mean, like, it's so true, though. I mean, I think this is just, like, something that, like, kind of comes with age and, like, a little bit more confidence, too, is that when we're just getting started out in the workforce, whether that's internships or, like, the actual workplace, we kind of, I don't know, because, like, especially in the tech industry, like, there's, like, a huge list of recs, like, basically every single job has, right? And you, like, look at it and you're like, I'm going to, like, suck in this role, right? But then, like, you interview somebody, or, like, somebody interviews you, like, just like you mentioned, Clara. And it's like, you know, if they give you a job offer and, like, they think you're capable of doing this, it's like, you know, they might even see on paper, like, maybe you don't have or possess every single skill that they have, but maybe they pick up some kind of thing, like, from your resume or from your background. Be like, hey, this person, you know, they did a lot of these case competitions. Like, okay, they're curious. And, you know, it seems like, you know, their grades continue improving every year. Okay, so they're, like, a strong learner, right? So, like, I think more experienced managers and people can kind of, like, pick up these, like, little notes, like, within, like, a person's sort of, like, persona and abilities to be like, hey, like, you know what, like, this person's, like, 70% of the way there, but, like, I can see that this person, like, if we bring them on and they're here for a year, they're going to learn and they're going to grow so much in that year, rather than Buddy, who, I don't know, for example, is, like, no extracurricular participations or any things like that. He has a perfect GPA, but, like, maybe he just gets into this job and he's super content, so, like, he can't grow within it. And so, yeah, I think, like, that's also something to think about too, like, you know, anybody listening, or, like, us as well. And I'm sure, like, you know, Tyler, you've probably experienced this too. And, like, I know, like, you and I were both at one point in our university degrees part of the not high grades club, and then yeah, I mean, like, you know, as long as you just have, like, the mentality that you, like, always want to learn and grow, like, I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say the more you do it, the more confidence you have. Like what most people know about consulting, you jump from project to project. There isn't a defined role for you to do. And I would say by me, you know, now having done, I don't know, 6 or 7 different projects, different roles now, I know I can pick up something right away. Maybe it takes, like, a week or 2 for me to be onboarded, but I know I can transform myself into these different roles and pick up these different skills. So it's very easy to feel like you're an imposter right away, maybe because you don't have a lot of experience. So maybe you go get some, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, like, doing what your dream job would be doing. It just has to be experience, and the more experience you have, the better, honestly. Like, there's no bad experience.
I like the point you made, though, that it's like you feel like, you know, with a couple weeks of onboarding, you're going to be kind of good to go. And so that comes to the point that, like, being an imposter and getting into uncomfortable situations is a skill in itself, and it gets easier and easier. No matter what it is, the more you do it, it just gets easier and easier. It seems like, I mean, it's always still going to be there. Like, I still have it at my job, you still have it at your job. I think, you know, a piece of it is always that Dave still has it at his job. Yeah, well, no, Dave, you just got through the probationary period, so you're good to go now, man.
Oh, I mean, whatever. I mean, probationary period, yeah, it's like, hopefully as long as you can, like, code and, like, build some systems, you'll be okay. But yeah, I can completely agree with you, Tyler. Like, I think the more that you do uncomfortable things, the better you get at it, right? And I mean, it's just like, you know, really at the end of the day, almost one thing that we need to think about is, what is the worst case scenario if I try this and it doesn't go well? Okay, like, I don't know, like, let's say Toastmasters, for example. One, you go and maybe you go by yourself or you go with a friend. Okay, I've just embarrassed myself, worst case scenario, in front of, like, 20 people. Okay, if it really was the worst thing ever, you can never go again, and you never have to see these 20 people ever again in your life. And, like, you think it actually mattered to them, but really, like, they would have already forgotten about it, like, 15 minutes after you talk. Like, no, they'll never think about it again. So, like, you always, like,
Yeah.
It's funny how much emphasis we can put on these things sometimes, but really when you break it down and you look at it at the end of the day, it literally means nothing. Like, we could just go try like a bunch of different things, like, and yeah, like literally means nothing at the end of the day. But you're right about that, Tyler. It is a game skill.
You know what the analogy I always have in my head for this one is that I come back to that helps me is like, at any time you're in like a bar or a club, right, and you go dancing, I'm always like, I'm the worst dancer ever. I can't dance, but it's fun. Like, I want to go do it, right? So you go dancing anyway. And then what I realized was, in all my years, to all the nights I've been out, I can't remember a single bad dancer. I can't remember anyone else that was bad at dancing, right? So it's like, I know they're out there. I know there's tons of them, but they just, it doesn't even like sink into my brain. And I think it's the same thing with everybody else. You know, you have this fear that everybody's going to notice this thing that you're doing if you screw it up, and you know, nobody cares. I don't think, because you know, it just doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's you're doing it for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think now I can just remember like a couple really embarrassing scenarios I had in university. But it doesn't matter now. It's like a few days later, nobody remembers.
The people that were there probably don't even remember it.
Yeah, they probably forgot like 2 hours later. Maybe a couple days, like if it was really, really bad, but like probably like 2 hours later. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. I guess another thing I want to share was, it goes back to the, like, how do you find your why kind of thing that Dave was mentioning earlier. I remember in my last internship, I was supporting a turnaround, which is what a lot of engineering students would be familiar with, the term. And turnaround, it's like when a plant is doing maintenance. So it's a lot of labor work, and you get to see the insides of the vessels, which is really cool. But I remember I was actually not as intrigued about the insides of the vessels. I was intrigued about how did they plan this turnaround? How did they know how many days it needed? What's the cost? What's the labor cost? What are the vendors? Like, what do they do? So I was always more keen on the business side of things, even within my engineering job, which is how I knew I wanted something different. So I would actually say to anyone else who's also wondering about a why or a career transition, maybe ask the people you're with, that you worked with, and what they noticed about you, especially when you're at work, or what your reflections were about some of the things you did, some things that you liked and things you didn't like, because my mentor who worked with me was the one who really put me on this path. It's like, no, you like definitely want to do consulting. You wouldn't be happy here, when I had my doubts. So yeah, that would be another recommendation, I guess.
Yeah, I would say like I kind of like that, like having the ability to ask maybe people who are a bit more like mature, more senior in the job that you're doing at that point in time, like picking up some things that you're doing.
Right.
Because I know even for say like myself on my end, like when I was doing my internships, I was just like, I don't know if lost is the right word, but I was just basically just doing my task. But I never like actually really thought about like, why am I doing this and like what am I gaining out of it? But then I think it like for some people, for example, like that might come more naturally at a younger age, and some people it might not. So, but having say like the support team around you, like you're mentioning, like a mentor or people within your workplace, like they're definitely picking up these things, and like they can see, like especially as somebody who's managing you, you can see, you know, what are you doing that's good, what are you doing that's bad, even if you can't pick that up. So it can help like really guide you, I think, going forward to if you're asking these questions, and like also taking the time to kind of like introspectively think about it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But Clara, Tyler and I really want to thank you so much today for coming on. We really appreciated it so far. There's a lot of good wisdom here, and it's been great. Obviously, I know a little bit about your path and from everything beforehand, just a little bit. But, you know, it's been really good to kind of like be able to share this. And I think like a lot of people are kind of like interested in obviously like this transition as well. But like also it's been good to kind of like highlight like some of the pros and some of the cons along the way.